What's up, Will Grant? Happy Thursday, big guy.
What's up, man? Happy to be here. How are you doing today?
Well, it's Thursday. It's my favorite day of the week because not only do I appreciate all my superhero friends, but I actually get to speak with a superhero. So good to be with you again, my brother.
That's awesome. And thank you, everybody who took the time and invested their time in showing up today and improving their health. I thank you. You're going to thank you. And, just the world thanks you because I say all the time, the happier and healthier we can be as individuals, the happier and healthier we can be as a species and as a planet. So just by bringing ourselves up helps out bringing the ones around us, and bringing up the ones around us helps up bring this world. So here we are.
Yeah, I love how you said you're going to thank you. Uh,
Yeah.
so thank you, Ed, for being here. I love that.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
mean, because health feels really good, like all the kind of the wants and desires that we feel like that we search for. At the end of the day, health is where all the answers are. If we can first take care of our health, and I'm not just talking about our physical health and our physical well-being, but our mental health as well. That plays into all different aspects of our life, because our mental health is completely related and connected to our physical health and vice versa. So by improving one, we're able to strengthen the other. And by strengthening one, we're able to improve the other. So here we are. Here we
Well,
are once again.
Will, I loved what you just said. Health is where all the answers are. This whole pandemic, social unrest. I think we have forgotten about preventative care right now during this craziness. I think stress levels are at an all-time high. People don't have access to prescribers or the healthcare system the way they used to. I'm not, people are maybe picking up some bad habits in order to cope with the stress. What are you seeing from your vantage point? That was mine, and it seemed very doom and gloom.
Well, it's been a challenge for me, not to get frustrated, and because I've been studying health and fitness since I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, and everything that I see in the external environment of what they're telling us to do to protect ourselves from the virus or protect ourselves, it seems like it's just out of our control. They want to take the control away from you, when in actuality we have so much more control over our health and so much more control over our happiness than what the doctors and the news and the newspaper give us credit for. Social distancing and putting on a mask is only going to do so much for our true health. If we really want to protect ourselves from viruses, we have to improve ourselves. We have to strengthen our immune system. We have to strengthen what nature's already given us as a line of defense, and that's our own bodies and our immune system. Our bodies have been evolved for millions of years to fight off viruses and fight off these sicknesses and fight off the diseases. But all the news and the doctors on the TV, they're not even mentioning your immune system. They're telling you to protect yourself by just secluding yourself inside the house, which is one of the worst things that you could do for your physical health and your mental health. Really one of the best things that we could do is by lowering our stress, not by scaring ourselves into, secluding into our house. And the best way to get healthy is to get outside and to breathe fresh air and to get under that sun. But it seems like everything that they're telling us seems to be the opposite. It's like they're wanting us to be stressed and sick, and because that's where a lot of the money's made.
Yeah, interesting. Wow, there's a lot packed into there. So Carrie, David, Dan, Braden, Gary, thank y'all for being here. If you're on the Zoom webinar, please interact with us as we kind of get into this topic. We have a Q&A box that I'll be monitoring. If you're watching the Facebook live stream, I know Will's going to be circling back to Facebook Live comments and answering all of those. So
Yep.
please check in on Facebook Live too. But really, to unpack what you just said, Will, I guess from a leadership perspective, with a global threat to your health that is spread through interpersonal contact in most of these metropolitan areas, the best thing for people to do is stay inside in the short term, but at least there be a plan to move forward. And I think we've just been stuck in the initial control aspect. We haven't ventured out very far. And now that we are, we're seeing spikes in the numbers again. In Louisiana, where I am, went from a green state, getting ready to let us go back to work, to now red for another 28 days. So
Yeah.
is there enough nature to go around, Will?
Yeah. I mean, like they say, I'm pretty sure every single human being on this earth can fit in just the state of Alaska. So it's not like we're overpopulated to where there's no space for us. There is space for us. And yeah, there's the big metropolitan cities like New York City, and the big cities where people are congested and they're stressed and they're sick and they're around other people who are stressed and sick, like in a riot situation. They're all of these negative bad emotions are just being expressed out onto each other. And then that's when our immune system is down at its lowest, our stress is up at its highest, and that's when we get sick. And that's when and when a small sickness goes further and further, that's a disease, and that's these real illnesses. So there's things that we can be doing that we don't have to seclude ourselves from every single person. I mean, it's probably not a good idea to go into New York City or to go into a place where there's just congested with a bunch of people that you don't know what type of foods that they're eating or what type of energy that they have, because we become an average of the top 5 people that we surround ourselves with. If you surround yourself with sick and stressed people, you will be sick and stressed, and your immune system will be compromised, and you will be more likely to get any sort of sickness and disease that is floating around. But if you look in nature, there's no such thing as a negative virus. There's no such thing as a bad bacteria. They're all working together in the benefit and health of the planet as a whole. And these viruses attack the things that are not necessarily working in unity with the overall goal of the whole system, if that's our body or if that's in the planet. You notice that the viruses that come up, if it's a coli or the viruses that came in the meat or even the corona, it's stemming from how we're treating our environment in many different ways, and that is going to affect our health because we are our environment. And the more that we separate ourselves from our environment, the more sterile our system will be, so it won't be able to fight off any sickness or any disease. We have to embrace and love and take care of our environment to embrace and love and take care of our own health.
Yeah, I remember growing up as a kid, Will, my mom and dad did not let me stay in the house very much. And I know, believe me, I know it was not from a health perspective. They wanted me out from underneath their feet. So go play outside. So you'd spend hours outside playing, getting dirty, getting stung, bitten, eating dirt, you name it. We were all doing that. Now I think it's a little bit different, that we're inside a little bit more.
Yeah, and that is one of the biggest issues that we spend almost our whole days inside. We sleep inside, we work inside. The only time a lot of us are outside is when we're driving and we stop somewhere and we walk from the door of our car to the door of the building, and then that small walk is in an asphalt parking lot with fumes of toxic chemicals from the buildings and from the cars. But we have to get outside and get our hands in the dirt and breathe in fresh air, not just in our environment but in different environments, because that's what's going to feed the diversity of our gut microbiome. And that's really the second biggest aspect to our health, is that millions or billions or trillions of different microorganisms and microfungi and parasites that are all living in our body. And we are more fungi and more microbacteria than we are human beings. We're only about 1% human being from our genes, and the rest of it are these tiny little microorganisms and microfungi that come from the foods that we eat, from the air that we breathe, from the water that we drink, from the soils that we touch, and from the emotions and relationships that we have. So to improve those things is to improve our health. But when we're stuck inside with artificial air conditioning and artificial lights and stuck on these screens, and we have to do and accomplish and get done, it's just causing stress to our whole system. It's causing stress to our brain. It's causing stress to our bodies. It's causing inflammation. And that's what breeds these negative emotions and these negative chemicals that in turn create our health. And that's what regulates our gene expression, because we have, I think, about 20,000 different genes that regulate health or regulate sickness. And based on our environment and what we do and how we think and how we interact is what either regulates the health gene or regulates the sickness gene. And being inside with, fake air conditioning and fake lights regulates a sick gene that we have to get outside of that and get outside and breathe in the fresh air from our environment, touch the soil, touch the dirt, and eat good organic plant-based foods. And that's what's going to feed our army, feed this local ecosystem of this forest, of this jungle that's in our body that fights for our health every single day. But so many of us don't have a strong army inside our gut and inside our bodies and in our fungal network because our lives are so sterile. We're afraid to touch the dirt. We're rubbing so much hand sanitizer on our body, and we're taking antibiotics, and there's antibiotics in our air, in our grass, in our soils, in our food. And all of that literally kills our immune system. It kills our line of a defense of all of this huge microorganism of team. Like, this is one big team that's working together for our health. And we have to support these microorganisms that come from our environment more than just saying, oh, let's hide inside and pour on some hand sanitizer and cover our face, so we can breathe in these plastic cotton, that's not helping. Like, it may prevent this coronavirus to be spreading in these, congested areas. But I mean, if we want to really be healthy and if we want to really be happy, we have to think outside of what's the norm and outside of what's telling us, because true health is not normal. Like, true health is when our mind and our body is connected in one, and when we are healthy, and when we are, and when we can handle stress, and when we can handle change. So when the weather changes, our body doesn't get sick. Every time the seasons change, our body doesn't get sick. Or every time something changes in our daily routine, we don't mentally stress out. That's true health, is when we can overcome our environment, is when we can overcome, these stressors that come about us every day. And that's true strength, and that's true immunity.
Wow. Okay. So we've just set up two huge topics here, Will, and I think you covered them all beautifully from a 30,000-foot view. We've talked about stress, and we've talked about the gut microbiome. Let's talk about stress for just a minute, because I would say, because of the work I do, I'm stressed a good part of the day, and that is by choice. I allow that to happen. So over time, that has created in me an opportunity for hypertension. Talk about it every time we go to the doctor.
That's high blood pressure, yeah, and inflammation as well.
Yeah, well, that was the other laboratory component that is always measured on an annual physical, is something called the CRP. It's called a C-reactive protein, and it's a general marker for inflammation. So as that marker goes up, your body is more inflamed. Then we have to go look and see, where's the inflammation coming from. So it's this huge spinning cycle of diagnosis by exclusion, that we test for this. Nope, you don't have arthritis. Nope, you don't have this. You don't have that. And eventually we get to something, and we're going to give you a prescription to fix that. Never have we had in healthcare, I shouldn't say never. Never have I, in my healthcare experience, had a conversation about changing my environment, spending more time outside, eating whole foods. None of those conversations are happening. So from a system standpoint, Will, I think, yeah, there's individual responsibility, but don't we have to change some systems that are in play here?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because it it seems ludicrous and almost impossible to talk about health without talking about nutrition. But that's kind of what the medical industry does.
Well, low
Like,
salt diet, we talk about it, but it's a low salt diet. Will, that's going to solve your problem.
yeah, I don't think that's how nature works. Like, but I think that's the issue is, doctors are going to school for so long, and I mean, their course on nutrition is at its bare minimum. That they're teaching you how to understand symptoms and then give it a chemical to hope to rebalance that symptom, which in turn causes more side effects that just cause more stuff out of balance. If you add chemicals to something, there's going to be reactions, and we have all of the whole pharmacy that's already within our own body. We just don't know how to activate it,
Yeah, we're the best
and
chemistry set in the world. I mean, that's all we
yeah,
are, is
yeah,
a big
exactly.
chemistry problem.
Yeah, exactly. We're chemical, we're electrical, we have all of these different systems already in our body, and we have to focus on what we can control. If you focus on, the medical industry and what they're doing, that's just relinquishing your control of, oh, I have high blood pressure, I'm going to go to the doctor to see what he can do about it. Well, he's going to give you a pill to lower your blood pressure, and then it's gonna stop your own body's ability to lower its own blood pressure, and then it's going to cause all these other things to go out of whack. So the key is to finding that alignment and finding that centeredness within yourself, so you don't need a doctor. True health is getting away from the medications. True health is having that empowerment within yourself to take care of whatever sort of stress and inflammation that your life circumstance gives you. And that's what stress is. All the sicknesses, or about 99% of all the sicknesses and all the disease, it stems from chronic inflammation. And inflammation is just stress on the body. So if somebody cuts you off and you give that guy the finger, that's causing stress. That causes some sort of inflammation inside your mind and inside your body. And that done every day, moment to moment, is just this. Then our bodies are just chronically inflamed, not only from the emotions and the thoughts that we're having, but from the food that we're eating. If we're eating toxic food, processed food, and a lot of it is the meats. We're eating meat from sick and stressed animals, and that is just causing, we're eating that DNA, we're eating that information, and then we're wondering why we're sick and stressed. But it's crazy that a sick and stressed person can go to a doctor and they'll never ask you what type of animals you're eating. If you're eating animal from sick and stressed animals, you're going to be sick and stressed. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's so much that needs to be changed in the outside circumstances, but the only way that we can change that is by changing what we do and what we buy. By buying the sick and stressed animals, that is just voting for more sick and stressed animals. And what I mean by sick and stressed animals is, take a chicken for example, who, chicken is known to be a very healthy option, right? But why are so many people eating chicken? Why are they sick and stressed? Well, it's because they're eating these chickens that are in these tiny, tiny cages where they're all going to the bathroom on each other. They're fighting for their lives. They never touch soil. They never touch the dirt. They never see the sun. And, and the chicken above them is pooping on them, and they're eating where they poop. They're so stressed, literally fighting for their lives. They're unhappy, and their microbiome is diseased. Their microbiome is stressed because they're never touching the soil. They're never, out in the sun. So then we have to load them with antibiotics, and we have to load them with chemicals to make sure that they don't get sick and die. And then all the ones that don't die, that's the ones that we're fed. And then we're fed this toxic information inside their DNA that's causing our whole body to be inflamed. And then that, over day after day after day, that's what causes the sickness, and that's what causes the disease. But if you take a natural organic chicken that's pecking in the soil and that's eating the bugs and that's seeing the sun, and that chicken is being a chicken, he's living a healthy life, then all of a sudden a chicken becomes extremely nutritious because we're eating that microbiome of that chicken that helps us, that feeds our system and that gives us these vital nutrients that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, happy chicken until we chop his head off and eat him. But that's a whole nother story, Will.
Yeah,
Um,
but like if it's done humanely,
yeah,
but if it's done humanely, that chicken doesn't feel anything,
yeah,
but when a chicken is tortured its whole entire life, that stress chemicals is being ignited inside his body his whole life. And then we're consuming that, and then we're stressed. And
yeah.
then that stress is causing inflammation, which ignites whatever disease that our DNA and our genes are ready for, Like I believe it's before they thought that all of our disease was just based on our DNA and our genes, which we later find out it's, yeah, we're susceptible to certain diseases or certain sicknesses. So some people might get a shoulder issue, some people might get a knee issue, some people might get diabetes, some people might get high blood pressure, some people might get Crohn's disease, but that's based on what your gene regulates. But our environment and the air that we breathe and the food that we're eating is what determines what part of that gene is expressed. So that's why we're in so much more control than what they tell us that we are. We can improve our environment, we can improve our diet, we can improve our emotions, we can improve our relationships, and when we do, that's how we improve our health.
Well, you said something really interesting, Will, about toxic information. That the things we eat is nothing more than information that is broken down and utilized in different parts of the body. I think there's another component of stress that is really apparent right now, and that's toxic information that we see, we hear, and we speak. We can
Yeah.
also propagate illness and toxicity with the words we use and with the sources of information
Yeah.
that we choose to educate ourselves
I
with.
can give you a perfect example. So you watch the news, right? And you're probably either watching Fox or CNN or MSNBC or ABC, right? And depending on which one you're watching, you're either watching something that is talking about how bad these protesters are and how they're criminals and how they're, delinquents, or you're watching the other side that's saying how bad the police are and how, in either way, whichever side it is, it doesn't matter. It's all activating the same anger and the same frustration. And these toxic hormones and toxic chemicals, that's what expresses that gene of sickness inside your body, of those toxic emotions and those toxic chemicals. But if you can express the compassion of like, look, there's people on both sides who are really struggling and we're really wanting the same thing and we're really in this together, that act of love and that act of compassion, that's what regulates the healthy part of our genes to get above the sickness. And it's literally as simple as that. But if our environment is toxic, not only from the chemicals but from so much hatred and so much separation, that's what causes the anger and the frustration and the hate. Those are the most toxic things that we can be consuming. So that's why, and the newspaper and the news, they feed off that because it's so addictive. We are so addicted to these chemical reactions in our body. Hate is extremely addictive. Anger is extremely addictive. We naturally want to go back to that if we're so used to going back to that because it feels good to be angry for a second because we feel that that short little burst of empowerment of, hey, I'm going to overcome this, but that is stress. That's us fighting off whatever it is, which literally upregulates disease and sickness. But like I said, to just get above that, to get away from the hate and the separation, to realize just how we have these different millions and billions of microorganisms that is supposed to be working together for our health. We are just the tiny microorganisms that should be working together for the health and the whole of this planet and this species. And the more that we can see that, then we won't be regulating these sicknesses and these disease. But the viruses, they attack the things that don't work in unison.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. I hear people talk often about the new normal that's coming, and that maybe God should shake us up out of this. And my response to that is that the new normal needs to be something. We don't need to go back to normal the way it was. Hopefully this was a wake-up call for you to finally arrive at a normal that is happy, healthy, strong, and that looks totally different than the life that you used to live. I think God's already been here and shook us. And now he's going, okay, now what are you going to do? You have an opportunity here not to do that anymore, not to eat toxic food, toxic information, whatever that is. Your new normal needs to be a new baseline of existence that is founded in good nutrition, good people, good spirits, good mindfulness. I just think people need steps to get there, right? Or systems or processes or something that gives them control enough to build momentum and not fear the new normal that looks totally radical and different than the past.
Yeah, I mean, like I think everyone's on their own journey, and that steps or process is going to work a little bit different for everyone. But like you say all the time, it starts with belief. First we have to believe that we're in control of our health. That it's not just based on what we're born with and we're either going to get diabetes or not. That we're either going to get Alzheimer's or that we're either going to get Crohn's disease or all these diseases or not. But no, the actions that we take, the way that we live our life and the emotions that we feel determine what sort of sickness or disease that we're going to get if we do get them. So I think first is the belief to realize that you're in control, and everything that and that takes taking responsibility, and we have to take a responsibility for our health and how we're feeling now. If you're struggling with anxiety or if you're struggling with a depression, based on what you're doing, and that's either feeding that or it's going to be starving that. And our actions need to be feeding health and feeding happiness and starving the anger and the frustration and the stress. And that's what's going to help change our belief, which is going to help improve our health, improve our environment, and improve our species and planet.
Yeah, well, that's a very reflective process, Will. I mean, you have to almost be vulnerable with yourself enough to go open that door and step through it. You did it. You were gifted, I would say, with an injury that created a span of time.
And that works
something's
for
got to be
everybody.
different.
So that's my injury, right? But everybody has their own issue, their own
Absolutely.
problem,
Their own injury.
yeah, their own trauma, so if you struggle with anxiety, that's your opportunity to stop and reflect and understand what's causing this. Why is this happening? And a lot of times it's one, us not being able to regulate our stress, and two, us not being able to get the medicine within our foods and within our environment of our gut microbiome to fight off that stress. I read something pretty recently that says that almost all of human beings' problems come because we cannot sit alone in a room on the ground without any distractions for 30 minutes, right? Which is just meditation, right? Most of us cannot sit and meditate for 30 minutes, and that's our body and brain's lack of ability to sit with our stress, to sit with our environment, and to manage what's going on. Instead, what we do is we avoid it and go to the next thing, So instead of whatever happened to us and that is causing our anxiety or causing our stress, instead of us having the strength to face up to that, and to say, what is this and how can I overcome it? We kind of retreat back into, we're just going to go in and, eat our bad food and to put our mask on and hope for the best.
Well, that goes back to the feelings that will make you feel better. So if food is comforting to you, instead of dealing with the issue, you go eat food that is probably not good for you. I think, you know what, this sounds like a good this week challenge, Will.
Say what?
This sounds like this week's challenge is going to be who can sit for 30 minutes with themselves without distraction.
Yeah. 30 minutes a day will keep the doctor away, you know, because like one, meditation is literally the practice of managing stress, right? Because all stress is just from us thinking about the past or worrying about the future. But when we meditate, we practice coming into the right now and dealing and managing with whatever comes up and then letting it go. And that is health. And being able to stop and connect with our breath, we learn to relax under stressful circumstances. And when we can relax, then that's when we can overcome whatever stress that is. If that's even everything from a car accident to high blood pressure, to indigestion, to heartburn. It's all about learning how to connect with yourself and relax so those different immune systems and nervous systems and autonomic systems can turn on.
Yeah, I thought about you the other day, Will. I have noticed recently with a lot of news happening here in Louisiana that I started having difficulty falling asleep. And talk about stress. If I can't fall asleep within 5 minutes, that stresses me out. So it was going out to an hour and a half before I would fall asleep. Well, that's bothersome. And it got so long. One night I said, you know what? If Will Grant were here, he would say, you need to breathe. You need to connect with your breath. So I can't tell you how valuable just box breathing for, I would say, 10 minutes, lights out.
Yeah.
But it took.
When you're watching the news, that's junk food for your brain. You're literally consuming junk that doesn't nourish anything in your body, right? So when you're watching that, you're consuming this junk, which activates your fight or flight, your sympathetic system that feels like it needs to run from a lion. And when you're in that, you can't rest, you can't digest, you can't sleep, your immune system can't rebuild, and you can't do all the things that health requires, right? So that's why meditation is so powerful, because you're able to sit with that and learn how to relax and let all of that dust settle. And when that dust settles, that's when we can be into that present moment. And in that present moment is when our health is upregulated.
Yeah. Well, I've heard you say, as a pharmacist, I, I am in a profession that dispenses drugs to people in order to produce a different outcome, to relieve pain, lower blood pressure, etc. You've come with the position that food is our medicine. So from that context, that people have two choices, I think it becomes very confusing when you look for information about healthy food. You can get a lot of toxic information out on the internet and count calories and macros and blah 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 blah. Where do people start, Will, in getting healthier through nutrition?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's actually so much more simple than what everyone thinks, right? Don't worry about the carbs or the macros or this or that. Just focus on eating real food from the earth.
So you're talking quality food.
Yeah. So first, we must realize that the more processed the food is, the harder that our body is going to have to process it. Okay. So just by having less packaged, processed, fake, man-made foods, that will do the biggest difference by lowering our sugar and lowering our packaged, processed TV dinners and stuff like that. And by focusing more on whole foods, if it grew from the earth or it breathed or lived at one time, that's going to bring the health for us. And the more organically and sustainably that is grown, the better it's going to be for us. So for example, a broccoli is going to be better than a Twinkie, right? Because a Twinkie's man-made, it's processed, it's loaded with sugar, it's a bunch of fake chemicals. A broccoli is a plant that grown from the earth. But you can also have two pieces of broccoli. And this is where it can kind of get confusing, right? Because all broccoli is not the same. All broccoli does not have, the same nutritional facts, no matter what Google will tell you, okay? So for example, a broccoli can be sprayed with a bunch of pesticides, chemicals, glysophate, which literally kills the gut microbiome inside that plant and inside the soils of what that food is grown. And then when we eat that, it's loaded with that antibiotic chemical of glysophate. If you don't know anything about glysophate, I highly recommend just looking it up. Essentially, it's the main compound that's in Roundup. And the Roundup that we spray on all of our grasses and spray on pretty much all of our foods kills that microbiology that I'm talking about that is so important for our health. And that microbiology is what we get from our environment and what we get from our foods. And when we're eating, these foods that is supposed to be loaded with the medicine, like our spinach and our broccoli and our, foods that grow, it's sprayed with all these chemicals that literally kill that food's ability to give us the medicine. And so just to shop organic, to connect with your local farm and taking it to the next level. And I'm going to have compassion because it's not easy. In our modern day, it's extremely inconvenient to eat healthy. And it's extremely convenient to go stop at McDonald's and get the worst of the worst. Most likely, the more toxic it is, the easier it is to get. And that's because of our regular systems and our regular processes that we must start with ourselves. So if it's available, just eat less. Like, honestly, one of the healthiest things that we could do is eat less. Eat less food. And the less food we eat and the less often we eat, the healthier we're going to be, and the less taxing it's going to be on our system and less taxing it's going to be on our environment. And I'm talking about all foods, especially less sugar, less processed, and less meats, because those are kind of the most toxic and the most taxing on our environment and on our health. But the less that we eat, because our body does most of its best work on an empty stomach. That's when our body can devote its resources and its energy on healing and regenerating and repairing. So just by eating less, best case scenario is 1 meal a day, or 2 meals a day. But like what they were telling us 5 to 10 years ago, having 7 to 8 meals a day is just putting so much stress on our digestive system. So we want to be having less meals a day and eating less, because if you notice, like, the people who live the longest, they're eating the least. The people who are living the longest are eating the least amount of foods, because that is just less stress on our body, to where our body can focus its time on the regulation. But then when we do eat, try to do the best you can on eating whole foods, eating plants, spinach, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, carrots, cucumbers. And it's even better if it's grown from your local farmer. If you have access to a local farmer who's growing his food organically, truly taking care of his soil instead of spraying the chemicals, that's going to be your second best case scenario. The single best case scenario that you could do for you, your friends, and your family is to start a garden. And I'm not just saying this because that's a true passion that I have, but that passion started from me searching what is the healthiest things that I can do. And like I said, the best things that we could do is get outside into that sun and touching the soil and touching the dirt. That's what's going to improve our microbiome. And if we're taking intention and taking action on actually improving the fertility and the life within our soil by growing the foods, as best as we can, and then consuming those foods, that's when our health really just takes the next level, because we're feeding the gut microbiome, not only by touching and feeding those soils, but by those foods. And that's when our strongest medicines are able to regulate that true health inside of our body.
So, Will, you come from a fitness background where there is some noise out there around damaging your metabolism. And what a lot of coaches out there, particularly nutrition and fitness coaches, will say is that you actually have to eat more in order to start losing weight, especially when you're on their training regimen. And if you withhold too many calories and go into too big a caloric deficit, you're going to destroy your metabolism. It's going to slow down and you're not going to lose the weight. You're actually going to gain. So correct us here in this narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say any more frankly as that's just a lie. Like, that is literally the farthest from the truth. And like we were talking about before this conversation started, how you can prove anything, and that's what they did was, the food industry, who is selling you the grains, who is selling you all these meats, who is selling you this toxic food, they paid scientists to find this fake information. That's not how the world works. That's not how nature works. That's not how health works. That's not how our body works. By going a day without eating is truly the healthiest things that we could probably be doing. And that's coming from Hippocrates and Socrates and Pluto. They even told you that your best doctor is just a fast. Okay. Because it's like anything. If I've mentioned a few times, if you take all the toxicity in New York City from all the buildings and all the cars and all the chemicals and everything, and if you just stop it, don't even pull it out, just stop it, what begins to happen? The earth and the biology tends to take over and take that health back over. And that's just what a simple fast does. But by it saying that it absolutely kills your metabolism, I mean, that's not true. That's not true in any way. Like, if you starve yourself for a long time and then go back to eating a bunch of junk food, a bunch of cheeseburgers, when you are fasted, your body's ready to soak in anything you may take it. So if you just give up and say, all right, I'm not doing it anymore, and then you give in and indulge with ice cream and cheeseburgers and bad food, that's what's going to make you gain weight, because it's soaking in all that fat and grease and toxins and all that stuff. But if you fast for 24 hours and then break it with a vegetable juice that's really light on your gut and just starts to rebuild that gut microbiome, it's one of the healthiest things that we can do. Fasting is literally one of the healthiest things that we could do for our physical health and our mental health. And the less you eat, the healthier you will be. At first, it becomes really uncomfortable because you're so used to eating every 2 to 3 hours. But after a week of skipping breakfast and having your first meal past noon, then all of a sudden your body starts to make a shift. It starts to make a change. It starts to relearn how to use fat as energy instead of the constant sugar that you're giving it. And then when your body uses fat as energy, it does a much better job at having sustainable energy. So our energy won't be going up and down and up and down, but it's a sustained energy, and our brain will work a lot better as well, which will make us happier, which will give us better decision making, which will make us healthier. And our health works as a whole. So if you have a heart issue, you can't target that heart issue just by thinking about the heart. Same with the lungs or the intestines. Our body works as a whole. If you have an intestine issue and you focus on just the intestines, you're only seeing such a small aspect of it and not realizing that, the stem of it may cause from a heart issue.
Wow. You're reminding me in this talk about fasting. I've seen a resurgence in fasting, particularly in the literature. Science kind of loves to come behind and try to prove a benefit that is perceived through a particular health habit. So we've known about fasting for a long time. You talk about Socrates and Plato and Pluto and all of them.
And Buddha and Jesus and Muhammad and
absolutely, they all talked about it. But I think in that context, there's value in the food restriction, because to your point, it's important to consider that first feed that you put in your face needs to be a quality nutrient because your body is ready. And number two, fasting is a very mindful process, right? I mean, you have to think past the pain of hunger.
You have to overcome your emotion. You have to overcome your desires. You have to overcome your wants. And that's where true health and happiness is to be able to be stronger than your thoughts, to be above your thoughts, to be above your emotions. And we have to realize that we're not our thoughts. Our thoughts are just, our brain is just a tool for us to realize how to analyze and figure out problems. And we are not our emotions. Our emotions are just chemical reactions based on our thoughts that feed our emotions, and our emotions end up refeeding our thoughts. And then it's just this circle process that feeds more of the same loop. But we have to jump outside of that loop and and that's why fasting is so beneficial, because our body is saying, hey, I'm hungry. I'm used to be eating. Give me some food. And then you have to be above that and say, nah, I got a different intention. My intention is health. My intention is happiness. And I have to build that strength of overcoming that. And that's mental strength, which breeds physical strength. And that physical strength is what's going to prevent us from getting sick based on any sort of virus that comes our way.
Wow, that was a knowledge bomb right there. Mental strength breeds physical strength. And yeah, I firmly believe that we become victims to our thoughts and act irrationally because of them. So I feel hunger,
And that's
therefore I
why
need to go eat.
yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's why meditation is so beautiful, because we are victims of these loops, right?
Hmm.
And when we sit down in that cross-legged position and meditate, we're able to get past those loops, right? Just the practice of being nobody, nowhere, no thing, no, practice being nothing, we get past those emotional familiar loops, and that's when we can reprogram our thoughts and reprogram our emotions and reprogram our systems in that present moment. But if we're always feeling his familiar feeling of the past, and trying to predict a familiar future based on this past, we're missing the beautiful opportunity of right now. And that's where health is. And that's when we can create these new loops and these new thoughts that breed health, instead of it's constantly breeding sickness.
Well, I would argue, Will, that we are unaware that we're in a loop. That perceived reality, that narrative that we're playing in our head, we're stuck in the frame and therefore don't know we have a problem.
Yeah, but if you meditate, you don't have that issue,
Yeah.
because when you meditate, that problem comes up. When you meditate long enough, all of those loops, they get diminished. So you're past a deeper layer to where you're able to see, oh, I'm not those thoughts. I'm just thinking this way based on this experience I had 10 years ago, and that fed this emotion, and then that emotion refed the thought. But when we meditate, like, people who meditate don't have that issue where they're not so much of the victims, because they're able to go to a deeper or higher layer of what our thoughts and emotions make us believe.
So how many days of meditation do you think it would take for someone to have a perceptible change in their life?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. So let's,
Well, you told me 10 minutes, right?
yeah.
Like,
Yep.
earlier in this conversation, you were struggling, not sleeping, and you took 10 minutes and just started connecting with your breath, and all of that began to settle, and then you were able to sleep, and you like, that takes 10 minutes, right? But then in 30 minutes later, if you get a call and then and it's a negative call, and the energy throws you out of alignment, then you got to do it again. So you will get benefits from 3 minutes of meditation. That's why the consistency is more important than the time. Okay. So if you only have 3 minutes, start every morning and just stopping for 3 minutes and breathing, and that'll make that day go a little bit better. Right. And when you do that long term, that's when you get results. And the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. Some people will see crazy life-changing changes in one day. Some people, it might take 3 years. But the people who take 3 years, they're still feeling and finding benefits in their first 5 minutes.
Yeah. So of the people on the call right now, I'm just curious. So Braden, David, Gary, Carrie, if you would, you might on the bottom, can you raise your hand or put in the chat feed if you are a consistent practitioner of a meditative or a fasting process? I'm just curious to see who consistently on a daily basis does this. And then if you perceive a change in your outcome, I would love to know.
And meditation can and should be anything. Every single moment of our day should be a meditation, should be some sort of practice of meditating. When you're having a conversation with your kids or with your spouse, that should be a meditation of just getting past the mind and just observing and listening. and being in that present moment. That's the practice of meditation. One of the best ways to meditate and one of the best ways to improve your health, like I talk about, is getting outside and going for a walk. Like the most beautiful thing about going for a walk is it is a meditation. Just let the mind settle and let the mind relax, and being that present moment, notice the trees, come to your senses, notice the wind, listen to the birds, and you're not only breathing the fresh air, you're getting the microbiome, you're getting the vitamins from the sun, and you're meditating. That's why a 30-minute walk every single day is probably one of the single best things that we all could be doing for our health, because you're getting it all in one. You're getting the movement, you're getting the blood flow, you're getting the oxygen, you're getting the microbiome, you're getting the stress relief, and you're getting the meditation.
Yeah, David says, I don't, he doesn't, but he's thinking about starting after listening to this. So, way to go, David. Carrie is saying in the beginning stages, um, she's been Wim Hof method for a few months, less consistent, and fasting for a few weeks, 12 hours, has been no problem. And yes, she's feeling better. So, yeah,
That's
we
awesome.
have proof beyond us, Will, that it works. Good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, there's proof and studies of people doing this for thousands of years.
yeah.
Like if we're struggling with anxiety, if we're struggling with our depression or any sort of these mental issues, it's because we don't know how to manage these thoughts and all of these things that are going in our mind. When we meditate, we literally go into our control centers and we start to make sense of all of these different thoughts and emotions that we're having, and then we're able to organize them, and then we're able to direct them towards the things that we really care about. But right now, especially if you're struggling with mental health issues like anxiety, it's all just this mumbo mess up here that we have no idea. It's like jumping in an airplane and seeing all these buttons, and you're like, I have no idea, how to land this plane. It might crash. I'm scared. I'm freaking out. But if you are in that cockpit and you're that pilot and you know what all those buttons do because you've studied it, you've spent the time in that position, in that seated position of meditation, then you know how your mind works. You know how your thoughts work, and you're able to manage that anxiety and that stress so much better. So then you're in the driver's seat of how you feel. If you had complete control over how you feel in any moment of the day, wouldn't you choose happiness?
Absolutely.
If you had complete control over your health, wouldn't you choose healthy? And that's what this is. We're able to dive into those control centers and to learn how to master our minds and be the master of ourselves to master our lives.
That seems insane, Will, that we have given up control of our health
It
by the
does.
food choices that we eat, and by the environments that we choose to sit, and by the stress that we allow to enter our lives. It is as if we have been ignorant bystanders and a victim of circumstance rather than a victor.
Yeah, I
Why?
mean, because we didn't know that spraying all these chemicals in our food were going to be killing us and the planet. We didn't know that working nonstop, without stopping and letting things settle was going to cause our brains to go haywire. We don't know these things because, one, they're not really taught and they're not so available. But now we do. Like, especially if you're in this chat now you do know. So there's really no excuse to prevent yourself from being happy and healthy and strong, because the answers are there. And that's the most beautiful thing about the internet, is we're able to compare our notes from the people from the east, from the people from the north, and the people from the south. We're able to see what's working for them, because we're all the same. We're all playing by the same rules and working on the same rhythms.
Yeah. So, Will, I know I've counted here in my notebook. You've already given. If people were to say, "Well, Will, how do I do all this?" You've already given 15 ways to reduce stress and improve your gut microbiome. So, in some combination, I know you could probably name 1,500 more things you can do, none of which point them to the healthcare system. All of these
Yeah.
are things that they can do with themselves, their choices, and their environment, right?
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, if you get in a car accident and if you break your arm in half,
Yeah,
you're
the
probably
dirt
going to
isn't
need
going to help you
someone who
there.
studied for a long time to be able to put that back together. You know
Sure,
what I mean?
of course.
But but if you have a common cold, the worst thing that you could do for your health is going and getting antibiotics. Like really, if you're not dying, like literally dying or something's broken, the worst thing you could be doing is taking a pill or antibiotics. Instead, you need to connect and realize what's going on, and to connect yourself back with nature and connect yourself back with yourself, and improve your diet and improve your gut microbiome. And for God's sake, get
Yeah.
outside, because that's where all of the minerals, that's where all of the health, that's where all of the good microorganisms are.
My wife is funny. Will, whenever she gets a headache or sick and she wants to take something, of course she comes and asks me, and I'm like, you don't need to take anything. It'll go away. So I'm the only pharmacist that that hates drugs. Our friend Dan has a question. Will, what's worse for the brain, caffeine or sugar?
I mean, sugar is probably one of the worst things for us, you know? Like, it's hard to say what's worse, because that could be in an opinion in a million different ways. But sugar is pretty bad, especially processed sugar. Like, that's sugar literally feeds like those, not that there's bad gut microbiome, but it feeds the ones that don't really work for us, right?
Yeah.
So you really want to be limiting sugar as much as you possibly can. Caffeine's not really that great for you, but it doesn't do near the damage as sugar does. Sugar literally prevents health in almost every way. Like it makes your whole system weaker.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Dan, I would answer the
stay away from as much sugar as you possibly can, unless it's like the good stuff like blueberries or strawberries, or berries are some of the best sugars that we can be taking.
Yeah. Will, I think that's a perfect way to answer Dan's question. From a science background, dose determines toxicity. So
Yeah,
water can kill you. If you drink too much water, you will die. Well, I think it's
yeah,
the same thing with caffeine and sugar. Good quality sugars that come from natural sources, in moderation, are great for the brain. Caffeine in moderate amounts are good for the brain. You go over the top in any one of those, you're going to hurt your brain. If you
yeah,
give the brain none of those, guess what? That's not good for the brain either.
yeah.
So,
And also both caffeine and sugar actually turn on your sympathetic fight or flight system. And that's when your immune system is not doing its job. That's when you're not digesting, repairing, healing. Both of those things, sugar and caffeine, literally make your body fight. And you don't want it to fight. You want it to relax and repair and create.
yeah, the brain will tell you when you've had too much of either one.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, but a lot of times it won't, because a lot of times we become addicted to the sugar or the caffeine, and then our brain is telling you to want more and more and more, and that's when we have to, like I said, be above our thoughts.
That's a good point.
and
Got to be above your thoughts.
and and no, and that's why, like, the most important thing is connecting back with nature, and the more steps that takes away from what's naturally in our environment, the more toxic it's going to be for us. And that's caffeine, that's sugar, that's lights, that's energy, that's information, that's anything.
Yeah. Will, I know we've never talked about this, but I was thinking about it just a few minutes ago, of when we were counting the number of things you can do to combat stress. I think one we've lost the art of is creativity. So would you consider yourself a creative person, and how does creativity help you combat toxic thoughts, toxic information?
Yeah. I mean, we're all creatives. Every single one of us are creating every single day. If you look out in nature, what is nature doing? It's constantly evolving. It's constantly creating new leaves, new feathers, new sticks. We are creating. If we're creating good or bad, we are the creators of our life. But a lot of us kind of are dipped away from that, to where instead of being able to create our reality, our circumstance or reality tends to create us. And that's why it becomes an exercise to create, and that could be anything. Like, it could be painting, it could be drawing, it could be making music, or it could be creating a garden or creating a child. You know, having a kid is one of the biggest ways that we can create. That is something that you created and that you can nourish into this life. But just the art of creating literally breeds vitality in our life, but it becomes really difficult to create when we're stressing, you know? So that's why it's important to find some sort of creative outlet for us all, because that's what's going to deregulate our stress and upregulate our positive genes. Because when we're creating, we're telling the universe and telling the world that, hey, we got something to offer. And that's going to make that our environment feed us a lot better and a lot more properly to be able to create more for our environment.
Nicely said. Will, David's asking, what do you think about when you meditate? Uh, he tends to have a problem with negative thoughts, like the world's problems that flood in. So, from that
That's
meditative process, take us
yeah.
there and how you
Well,
mastered that.
well, that's the practice, you know, like that's the whole process. Sometimes I think about an itch on my back. Sometimes I think about a snack I want to have later. Sometimes I'm thinking about the world problems. Sometimes I'm caught in my head in my own sexual fantasy, you know, like that's gonna happen. Like that's so normal, but that's the practice. That's the practice, is being able to just sit and notice where it went, let it go, and bring it back to your breath. And then in 10 seconds or 3 minutes later, it might go back to that thought. Notice it and then let it go and bring it back to your breath. And that act of just noticing it, that's where all of the strength comes in, of being able to bring ourselves back to that present moment. And when something keeps coming up, that's when we start to really observe our patterns and observe our natural habitual ways of thinking. And look, if something is keep coming up and over and over and over, maybe that means that we need to do something about it. Okay. You know, so like if there's a problem that keeps coming up, that's okay. Notice it, let it go, bring it back to your breath. And then when it's time to do, maybe it's time to take a real action on whatever world problem that is keep coming up, you know? So for example, you know, a world problem that keeps coming up to me is health, you know, because I see everybody that I care about around me, they're struggling with health. They're struggling with mental health and they're struggling with the physical health. So that's something that burdens me, and that's what breeds that passion and wanting to help. And in the same way as I see, you know, the humans around me struggling in health, I see the environment struggling with its own health, and I see it mirror itself as well. Everything that's causing our health to struggle is causing, you know, the earth's health to struggle. And that's what comes up in my mind when I sit with myself, right? But all these different things are gonna come up, and that's okay. That's how you get to know yourself. That's how you're seeing your own control centers, is by noticing what comes up and just let it go, let it flow like a river, and bring it back to your breath. And the more that you do this, the longer that you're going to be able to stay focused and stay attentive and put your energy towards whatever you want or whatever you care about. Because what we focus on expands. Where we put our attention is where we put our energy. And where we put our energy is what creates our life, right? So by sitting with ourselves in that meditation, things are going to come up. Let it go and bring it back towards your breath. And then when it's time to do something about it, you'll know.
Yeah, I've heard it said in that meditative state, it is a recognition of the thought, not a response to it. So, you know, after your meditation, when you're reflecting on what thoughts came into your mind, you know, if a lot of them are focused on worry, fear, and scarcity, gee, why is that? Well, maybe it's because of the sources of information that I'm choosing to go through. So the reflection upon the patterns, to your point, I think is again the value of the process. And I also heard it defined as this, that in a meditative state, you're not your thoughts, you're the divine behind it, watching the play of energy in front of you.
We are able to see our thoughts.
Yeah.
That is proof that we're not our thoughts, because we can sit back and pay attention how these thoughts come and how these thoughts go. And you said a perfect word of just not reacting to that, but letting it go. And then that's going to strengthen our ability to not react towards all of these external things in our life, but be able to let those things go and to create our best life. And that's when we can be in that present moment of that unfamiliar unknown is that present moment, and letting know it's okay not to know what's going to happen next.
Mhm.
But that's when we're able to create, true beauty.
I think a lot of people perceive that there must be something that comes into their mind's eye that means, yep, I'm meditating.
Oh,
So
no.
as long as I'm hearing the Gregorian chant music come into my brain, I'm finally here. I have reached nirvana. But no, it's
Yeah.
really just a reflective process.
Yeah, yeah. It's far from that. And that's one thing I hear the most probably is I can't meditate because my mind's too busy. That's
Yeah.
like saying I can't clean my house because my house is too dirty. Like it doesn't make sense. Like that's the whole process of sitting down and letting the mind settle and letting the mind relax so you can get above the mind and just be.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Will, we're coming up on another week of challenge that I think people are craving an opportunity to step into several of these steps and systems and processes that you mentioned. Over 20 now on this call, but I know there are more. What do we want to challenge them with this week?
Well, I have all of these system and processes in my staple course, my Happy, Healthy, Strong in 6 weeks, where I put all of these different things that connect your mind and body and your mental health with your physical health, and these different movements and practices and routines and workouts, all made into a 6 week course that evolves as you evolve week by week. And I want to give it away for free because I want to spread this love. I want to spread this health to as many people as possible. And I want to give it away for free, but I want to see some actions taken already. So you guys are already in that Facebook group, hopefully Will Grant group. I want to see or hear about what you guys are doing for your health this week. Every single day, do something. If it's sitting and meditating, if it's putting your hands in the soil, if it's getting outside and going for a meditative breathing exercise and walk, just go outside and do something. One thing for your health every day. Take a photo, post it inside the group saying, this is what I'm doing and this is how it's making me feel. And I'm going to pick one person and I'm going to give away my course for free at the end of the week.
Wow, that sounds awesome. Will, can I sign up? Am I excluded from
Yeah,
that?
yeah, man. I want to see you do it. You'll get access to it, but I'm pretty sure you already got access to the course. You not only have access to my current course, but you got access to all the future courses I'm working on right now. So,
Yes, and I can't wait for those, Will. Those are game changers. I'm so excited for your creativity that I think is going to help a lot of people do a lot greater things with the control that they take of their own life to be
yeah,
happier,
that's
healthier.
the goal because we're in this together. I'm only trying to empower myself to empower you to empower us.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right, Will. So chat with Will Grant next week. We're going to think of a topic and it's going to be another game changing discussion. Or you know what? We
Yeah,
might even have a special guest. You just never know what's going to pop up on
yeah.
chatwithwillgrant.com.
Or, leave in the comments below on future topics that you want to see. Post it in the group on topics that you want to see. And yeah, like the more you guys communicate with us and let us know, the stuff that you guys want to learn about or hear about or the problems you guys may be having, then the better we can serve and contribute to you.
Yeah, so whether you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, or here live, please don't ever hesitate to leave us a message or make a request for content. We are ready, right?
Yes,
Cool.
sir.
Well, no other comments, Will. I don't see any questions in the chat, no Q&A, and nothing on Facebook. So let's land this plane, man.
All right, man. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really, appreciate you guys spending the time to invest in your health and, give this video a share with anybody that may be wanting to improve their health. Because, like I said, the more that we can help out the ones around us, the more that we can help out ourselves as, a community, a state, a nation, a species, a world. We're in this together. So let's start bringing each other up.
That's awesome. Braden, David, Gary, Carrie, thank you guys so much for staying here the entire time. Dan just popped off, so thanks to everybody who showed up live. We appreciate you.
All right, guys. Thank you. See you.
Peace out.